Welcome to the Legal Innovation Forum podcast series, Leading at the Intersection of Business and Law. This episode features an interview with Eric Zaazour, co-founder of the automation software provider Laurel. Eric is going to reveal the inspiration behind Laurel's timekeeping solution, and he'll discuss how law firms should be using AI to get the best returns. He'll also reveal his vision for the future of knowledge work as AI continues to reshape the law firm business model. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and stay tuned for the next episode.
Welcome to our podcast. I'm Andrew Bowyer, the founder of the Legal Innovation Forum. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Eric Zaazour, who is the co-founder of Laurel. Laurel is a San Francisco-based provider of automation software that leverages AI to connect data to business outcomes and to empower knowledge workers with new insight into how they spend their time so they can use it with intention. Welcome, Eric. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to chat with you.
So, Eric, let's start with, and I've done my best pitch of Laurel here at the beginning, but tell us what Laurel does. Tell us a little bit about the company's history, and then we'll move on to your history as a co-founder of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I could go on for hours about this, so I'll try and keep it brief. Laurel is returning time. We're returning 6.4 years on average to professional service workers. And the focus is on taking digital workspaces, organizing time and data that we can extrapolate from those workspaces and showing businesses where they can optimize. And so this all was sort of born, funny enough, in law, in practicing law. And if you think about a professional service that has to quantify their time the most, it's attorneys, because the industry is centered around the billable hour. And so you look at an attorney's output at a large law firm and you ask, how valuable is this worker? It's based on time. They have billable targets. They have yearly bonuses that are based on those targets. And so when we were sort of practicing, we understood that this metric, this timesheet we were building, not only justified our value to the firm, but it also was justifying value to the client. And there had to be a better way to go about constructing this because we were pretty awful at it. I think that's for starters. And we realized pretty quickly that if you don't abide by outside counsel guidelines or miss sort of revenue or miss entries, you can cause a lot of financial harm to the firm. And so it just sort of teed up, this pretty clear vision for us, which is, well, if you're going to build anything, build something that saves people time, but also build something that makes businesses money. And automated timekeeping just fell right in the middle for us. And so that's how we began. The idea is as we built Laurel, realized that time in legal is just the first step. There are so many other issues in accounting, in consulting, that also struggle to quantify time or leverage output or understand quality because of time and the inaccuracies of how they collect that data. And so we quickly began POCs and proving out our technology in those other verticals. And it's been pretty exciting to see the growth in the past 10 years.
Fantastic. Yeah. So tell me, I want to go into a little more detail about this concept throughout the interview, but tell me a little bit about your own personal journey. And you've been with Laurel the last 9-something years and more of the co-founders, but tell us about your journey.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not as exciting as it might appear to be on its face, but for me, pretty exciting. I fell in love with product design. So I go to law school, and in the summer in between my first and second year, I get exposed to the practice of product design, in specifically digital interfaces. And I just became obsessed. I've always been someone who cared about, pragmatic business is and values that businesses can drive, but I also really love creativity. I kind of grew up in a split environment. My dad was very entrepreneurial, my mom was very creative. So in my head, I felt like I'm getting the technical aspects of business through law, fulfilled, but I'm not getting that creative side. And product design sort of unlocked the creative side of myself. And so I had met a friend who's actually now our head of design. Um, and he had explained to me what he does to design digital interfaces. That sort of set me off. Our CEO and founder, Ryan, was obsessed with automating timekeeping, and he had been explaining it um, to me one day. And I sort of just ran with it and built out a prototype of what I thought the platform should be and how it should operate. And it sort of just took off from there.
Awesome. So when it comes to this notion of what you guys do differently in this market of, let's talk about legal primarily. I mean, the billable hour has been a long-standing measure of value for law firms to the marketplace. And there's lots of tools out there that are able to track time. So what's different about what you guys do versus that? What problem are you setting out to solve, where you are saying, actually, if you do it this way, if you think about designing this differently, engaging with our platform, it can be so much more powerful than just using another platform to keep time with?
Yeah, absolutely. So, back in 2016, 2017, we sort of pioneered the idea of automating timekeeping. And in the legal industry, it's defined by what you put into a time card. So if you think about automating time, most people, their head goes to, well, show me a timeline of everything that I did. And I hope it's as accurate as possible. But that's, we only see that as 25% of the problem. The other 75% actually structured around how you create draft time entries. So in legal, for example, there are four central themes in a time card. The first is, what did I do? That's the capture. The second is who I did it for. The third is, can you describe what you did? And the fourth is, how do you codify what the work was? So you're thinking to yourself, right, I got to put down the client. And by the way, mention or realize I didn't mention duration, because that's something that's assumed and not central to automating per se. A lot of technologies are already doing this, and that's not novel. But if you think about what automating a timesheet's about, it's about nailing all four of those components. And so we set out to build models that actually individually service each of these components. So when you see, folks advertise automated timekeeping, they might mean we automate the capture of everything that you did, or we help identify who you did things for. But Laurel really marries all the questions together. More importantly, you've got these things called outside counsel guidelines, right?
Yeah.
So the client is now saying, I need you to structure your time entries in a certain way. That's going way beyond just tracking your time. That's now saying there are rules to how you construct a timesheet. A massive cognitive load for a lot of folks. And Laurel brought OCG compliance and construction directly to the timesheet, which has been pretty magical. And so I'd say those four models, those four pieces of the time card and outside counsel guideline enforcement is really what sets us apart.
Interesting. And obviously, we're in the midst of an AI revolution, which we've been witnessing for, well, it's been ongoing for 50 some odd years, but it's captured the public's attention in the last 2.5, 3 years now, really, and the market's attention. So tell me what the AI journey has been for Laurel.
Yeah, it's been so amazing. We started in 2017, 18, playing with machine learning models. Because if you think about codifying time entries, phase task codes, it's really just a heuristics problem, right? It's pretty easy to solve the math on what you should assign and what you shouldn't. But the more that we realize what effort went into other parts of the card, you really were looking at other technologies you could leverage. And with the latest advancements, sort of our wildest dreams came true in what we've been able to build. And so the whole market has really shifted towards, what are you foundationally including, but what data are you collecting to power that entire motion? I like to think of this, and this is just my sort of dumbed down version of the industries, if you will. you're either a data generator, you're generating a unique set of data points that you can feed large models, or you're a data processor, you're a large model, or you're doing some type of visualization of both. I think if you think about where the industry is, you've got to fit, products got to fit into one of those categories to really make sense. And you see a lot of folks that might be marrying the two in a very thin way. And this is what you see with the ChatGPT wrappers or the OpenAI wrappers or Anthropic wrappers. But the companies that are generating one of those things at a foundational level, I think, are going to be really special. And so where Laurel fits is the time data that we generate is pretty unique.
Absolutely right. One thing that I find very interesting too is that out of that foundational data, I mean, it's a convergence of quite a few different strings at once going on here. One is that this concept of the billable hour and how law firms monetize their time, which is people, the inputs of their people, and they value that in the market due to AI is fundamentally under threat, whether they like to admit it or not. It depends. But it's fundamentally changing. And one of the concepts at the forum we even focused on is what does a law firm look like in 2030?
Mm-hmm.
And that foundational data piece, all those inputs of timekeepers in a business that's focused on keeping time, that's how it generates and measures value. That's fundamentally shifting. I'm not sure where it's going to end up. I don't think anybody knows. But I would argue that if you're a strategist in a law firm, if you're the COO or the managing partner or the CFO, you want to be looking at how that time of all those folks you have in that firm is being deployed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to fundamentally define your model, where we're going to a world where the output that AI can produce from an associate, for example, even though it may be valuable to the client, it can be done in a matter of seconds or minutes versus hours. And so
Absolutely.
How do you get your head around that? And how would you suggest a law firm look at that data set, that data stream that you guys are producing, that foundational data set, to help inform their decisions on how they navigate their business model's future?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this question has been driving us, for the past 4 or 5 years, and it's a great one. Look, it's kind of interesting, right? The thing about artificial intelligence is that it's attacking almost every industry at the same time, and how we view the revolution of AI and how it's changing industries is you have to expose low leverage versus high leverage. I think the immediate thought that most people have is, well, it's just going to take my job. Like it's going to do what I do. But that's not necessarily true. You can't automate what you don't know. And so businesses that don't know how to create a work product or generate a work product, it just can't be automated immediately, right? There are certain variables that go into creating that product that are going to require a human. But the time that we spend drafting meeting notes or scheduling conferences or the mundane tasks, things that aren't providing client value, that's the stuff that we're going to immediately automate. That's where productivity is going to increase tenfold because of the tools that we adopt. And so when we think about, well, where's law going in 2030? What's that going to look like? Well, we might not find ourselves scrolling through Westlaw and looking for a case that we've been trying to find for hours. We might have a much more intelligent way of doing that. But we will find ourselves crafting arguments, right? We still will find us being the heart and soul of advocacy in the justice system. We're just not dealing with all the side journeys in our day that bog our time down. And so I view this, we view at Laurel, we view this as something very empowering, right? It's going to remove all the fluff that's causing us to work 16, 17-hour days and rather focus people on the highest value work that they can be doing for their clients. And our theory is that it's based on time, right? If you marry time spent every day and the activities you perform, you can quickly see what should be automated and what shouldn't.
Yeah. If we look at that as an opportunity versus a threat, because the threat is All that time my associate spends researching on Westlaw, I can bill them out at $500.
Mhm.
So now my client's smart enough to know that I'm not going to pay your associate. I don't even know if I'm going to pay your associate at all for any of the work they're doing, which raises different questions, but we'll stay on this line of reasoning. If I'm not able to value that time in the same way, but this notion is that I am providing you as my client, if I'm a law firm, a lot of value here.
Mhm.
And therefore, you should still pay me the same amount or maybe even more. I'm just not measuring it by the hour anymore. I'm measuring it by the value. How do you think firms can make that case?
Absolutely. It's the industry shifting to outcomes. So what will a GC tell you if you
Yeah.
ask them about their legal bills? They'll say, I want predictability.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm searching for. The billable hour is tough to grok sometimes because predictability can be all over the place. This is where you see alternative fee arrangements come in, or even hybrid arrangements where there's fixed fee up front for a term and then time and materials after. Um, what we see is there has to be price optimization in every industry. Oftentimes, things that become too expensive get reimagined and then commoditized in a way that the masses can afford in new ways. This is not the best example, but just think about Uber,
Yeah.
right? I used to pay $50, $60 for a cab. And then when Uber came out, it's like I'm paying $20, $30 to go the same place, the same outcome, just at a much cheaper price. I think that the volume and productivity of firms will increase massively. Their
Mm-hmm.
margins will improve massively, but their costs might come down. And I think that's a win-win for both sides.
Yeah. So the overall profitability. And do you think clients will still pay the same amount for legal services?
I think there's going to be bans on outcomes. I
Yeah.
think there's absolutely going to be a floor on, look, we know that settling this suit is worth X amount to you.
Yeah.
And if we drive that outcome, that's the price to pay.
Mm-hmm.
There's plenty of evidence of that in markets already. You can think of it very much like time and materials in corporate departments when they were doing M&As to just taking a percentage of the M&A, right? That same transformation happened because in corporate, very easy in corporate law to be specific, it's very easy to see the repeatable and predictable patterns of work. They haven't been changing. Taking a company public is taking a company public. Drafting or performing an M&A is M&A. It's not. There's not so much variability in how the work is performed that the pricing structure needs to be massively revisited. It's worked for those firms that they can take percentages of these deals and be profitable.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other tailwind in the sector's favor is that we are living in what we're calling a risk on era, which is the financial markets view risk on as a positive thing. We're viewing it as there's so many emerging and emerged risks that organizations face that they need to navigate. It's so highly complex that the role of lawyers in helping them navigate is more important than ever. And if you really talk to, the CFO of a large conglomerate, they'll say, our legal spend sounds expensive, but in the big pool of everything, it's not as much as it sounds. And it's really, really valuable because if we get something wrong, if we get a transaction wrong, if we get it wrong on a bet the company litigation, it's so costly compared to those fees. So how they bill for them versus the market value of them, I don't think that changes, because if they didn't want to pay that market value, then that would have changed.
Yeah, they wouldn't have.
They wouldn't
Yeah.
have. And that's the funny thing, right? That's a bit ironic. So I do think it's interesting too, though, because those firms that are making that shift, it's almost like they're, if they don't have the data, which is one of the things that you guys are providing, it really makes sense of what people are actually doing and how they're using their time productively and how they're using their time unproductively in a business based on time. If you don't have that information at
Absolutely.
your fingertips, you can't make the correct conclusions about how you shift that business model to things like outcomes based. pricing models or billing, etc. And I think it's fascinating, right? It's almost like why you better get Laurel. Not to be too much
Yeah.
but like why would you want to be wandering around in Plato's cave? You need to have that information to make these decisions that are fundamental to your business model, and other firms are going to be doing it.
And you know what's so funny is this has happened already. If you think about manufacturing industries, right? So I guess we'll use the most basic example, which is the production model at Ford. Right? We all remember Ford for how they reinvented the way that a car was produced through the assembly line. And if you've seen the evolution of that work, you can ask any of these manufacturing businesses down to the cent how much it costs to make their product. So ask any car company, how much is it, what's your margin on a Ford F-150? But if you ask professional services to identify their supply chain, you ask any partner at a large law firm, hey, what's the percentage on your margins? Like, walk me through what profitability you protect across the board. Because of the variability of how professional services operates, they might not have the clearest answer. And our theory is, because time is based on human memory and relies on humans to input timesheets, that margin is probably still off by about 7% is what we see on average. And so imagine running a multi-billion-dollar business with margins that might be unclear, sometimes are just on gut feel, and are tested by just putting prices in front of clients and negotiating what they'll pay for and what they'll not pay for. That's a pretty insane way, I think, to operate. Yeah. And that's where Laurel comes in, right? Let's figure out the true picture of how much time is really being spent on these engagements. Let's understand where we're losing time. Let's understand where we could be gaining time. And then let's figure out how we could optimize margins by automating away what's not needed and keeping the value adds that folks are driving forward.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. So tell me about the investment from Google Ventures. This has recently been announced, I think, in the last quarter or two. So tell us a little bit more about that deal, and what brought you to doing this with Google, and the rationale on your side, and then the rationale on Google's side for investing in your business focused on the legal sector, and then more broadly speaking, anyone in the business of keeping time.
Absolutely. It's great because it's really everything we're talking about, right? There's this feeling amongst folks deploying capital in the AI space that, and you can call this a bubble in some ways. People don't know where AI is going to go.
Yeah.
Right. They don't know what it's going to impact, what it's going to affect. But what we do know is that we have to understand, based on the unit of time, where work can be optimized and where it can't be. That's basically a fundamental question in the enterprise. Mm-hmm. I think in the consumer space, that question is still being answered. And we're coming up with a lot of fun ways to deploy ChatGPT to our personal lives and, help me with this cooking recipe, or take a picture of something and it'll instruct you how to resolve whatever problem you're looking at. But in the enterprise, what we're trying to figure out, what a lot of these investors are trying to figure out as well, is what's the next tool where adoption is clear and profit can be squeezed. And you only really figure that out if you understand where time is being spent in an organization, because AI is meant to optimize time. Yeah. If you think about all the latest hope out of any large scale economic forum you listen to, it's that GDP is about to be on a skyrocket. That's a terrible term. It's about to be on a rocket ship because of what AI will unlock. Well, how do you know how to increase GDP or productivity? You have to analyze where time is being spent. Yeah. There's an amazing quote that we heard from, I won't mention his name, but he's at OpenAI on the C-suite. And he had mentioned what one central question that we couldn't answer in the enterprise space is, there are a lot of nails, but what's the hammer? Like, where are we going to be able to apply OpenAI to really attack industries and optimize where time is being spent? It's what Palantir is really amazing at is deploying engineers to figure out what processes can be automated by just sitting on site with folks, right? And seeing what they're doing and then building out the automations by hand. I think Laurel fits into that picture by exposing that cartography across all industries.
Yeah, it's interesting too. I mean, we were looking at it in our organization, how time is spent, how could this be done better? And I think it's a good baseline way of thinking about it is, we you know, we look at the press stories, right? And they love the AI story more than anything. And even I was I started my career at the Financial Times, so the business press is looking at, you know, even they can be faulty, even though they're an authoritative newspaper of this concept that exotic story always sells. And then you get things like, I think it was from MIT a couple months back, or maybe a month or so, saying, well, in 95% of cases, organizations aren't getting any return on this AI.
Mhm.
So it's, again, a little bit of chicken and egg. People know how transformative it is. If you just start using AI and you start seeing how fast it can do things for you, but how do you scale that and where do you start? And I think that's what you're saying there. How do people spend their time?
Absolutely.
And if they
That's
spend it
right.
in more efficient, effective ways, that would drive productivity, which would drive the company's bottom line, which puts GDP on a new trajectory.
Couldn't agree more. And it's such a simple concept, but I think about ways in which it's already made me more productive. And it's quite surprising. I used to spend a lot of time sort of drafting requirements documents, for example, product requirements documents. And now I could use a mixture of sort of voice notes, right, and meeting transcripts to craft a base foundational document to begin editing. That's a great example of where time is being spent in a high value scenario. But now I never, when I'm reviewing spreadsheets, for example, sometimes we're doing business impact reports and I want to see trends in the data. I used to have to scroll through Excel, run some scripting to figure out what the right number is, tweak that if I'm not getting the right output. But now I can use natural language to review the spreadsheet itself, right? That's work that's helping me do my job, but it's not delivering value to Laurel. That's just giving me an underpinning to produce value. And that's really where I think AI is thriving right now. And slowly, as we continue to move upstream, the tasks that require humans less should be automated, and the ones that continue to drive value forward will be where people thrive. I've also had this idea. This is totally off the shelf too. This could be a totally wrong prediction of where the humans are going, but I think about medical or medicine, and I think a lot about surgery. And if you imagine the precision of robotics in surgery in the human body, I mean, it's pretty clear that robots should absolutely be doing surgery where they can, but robots can't come up with new surgeries. And so I really think that that's where doctors will continue to thrive. And in a lot of ways, they might software engineer these new surgeries based on their studies. So I feel like that's the value add, right? Is understanding how to perform the surgery, and then doing the surgery itself can be automated in better ways.
I mean, you speak with a lot of folks running professional services firms, and law firms specifically. I mean, this is a big leap that people have to make, this leap that this is going to take my profession. This is going to take the way I make a living away. We're entrepreneurs, right? So we see it a little differently because you're molded in that we'll figure out a way to succeed and make money in new ways. If my job is I'm a heart surgeon, or I am a litigator, a commercial litigator in Texas, and this is how I make my living, and I make it by billing hours, or I make it doing open heart surgery myself with my hands because I've got that expertise. I'm having to take a huge, and by the way, handsomely paid for those services. I have to take a very big leap in my mind to say me writing the code for that surgery and letting a robot do it could even be better for me, or me letting AI run that file, and I get a percentage on that outcome where I'm putting my money where my mouth is, so to speak, as a litigator. How do you suggest folks make that leap in their minds that they can be ahead of that curve instead of finding themselves in 2030 behind that curve? Because I do think this is happening. We're not going any worse here.
It's hard to answer because you're right. My brain sort of thinks differently. But it's recognizing the trends and asking yourself the same question that we asked ourselves when we started chatting today, which is, where are law firms going to be in 2030?
Yeah.
So for those folks that are running those shops, they've got to ask themselves, where is this going to be in 20, 30 years? I think if I told you that the best way to communicate with me was sending a letter in the mail,
yeah,
wouldn't you just sort of laugh and say, why can't I just send you an email? Right? Like that's sort of where we were 50 years ago, 60 years ago, and where we are now. I think when times change, they don't change to destroy or dominate a certain industry or take away. I think they just ask people to evolve, and we've done this time and time again as a society. And I think the only difference this time around is that AI is being introduced to every industry at once.
Yeah.
That's the only variable that I think scares people a little bit, which is fair, but it's also a great calling to optimize.
Yeah.
Right. I've seen we've all seen that seminal example at San Francisco, where you've got that Cafe X. You can go up and there's no staff, nobody there, and it makes a cup of coffee for you. But if you think about it, it's removing maybe someone making the coffee, but someone still has to maintain that system.
Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be a lot of expertise in infrastructure. There's going to be a lot of expertise in robotics, and that's going to open up a massive amount of new industries for folks, or recycle experts in certain industries to say, hey, you could now manage this fleet. I think the best example I have of this is truck drivers. I really believe that truck drivers are going to be off the road and behind computers just managing autonomous vehicles because they know it best. They know it best and they understand. But where a person can only drive one truck, they might be able to manage 10 remotely. So their job will be reimagined, but likely a lot more profitable for them too.
Yeah. And the outcome and output is the trucks still need to get something from A to B.
Right.
That doesn't disappear.
No.
And one other thing I noted just in this conversation, and I've been thinking about it lately, when you think about law firms and they say, well, they're averse to change. If you look at how lawyers evolve their practices, we're doing a lot in another sector right now. We're focused on the critical minerals space. So we do programs about that. We have a forum next week in New York on it. And you look at, we work a lot with some large US law firms, some large Canadian law firms, some British firms. And you see these folks, they say, okay, I'm going to evolve towards that opportunity. I mean, critical minerals has just captured our imagination in the past couple of years. That's a different topic entirely. But you can see, that's how private practice lawyers work. They move with the times themselves. They say, okay, we're going to go after this. This is a hot practice right now. We're going to build out my practice here. And I can see me leveraging this skill set I learned doing something different into an opportunity here. I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about a lawyer, I can't remember where he is, in Chicago, said, he's the leading expert on data centers now and how he came to that. He was a commercial real estate lawyer. And then he said, 10 years ago, this light bulb went off. And so this capacity to be entrepreneurial and shift already exists within professional service. They're, in fact, fantastic monetizers of opportunity. It's just their business model is changing at the same time. But that entrepreneurial spirit and that way of thinking actually exists very much. And that flexibility exists, I think, very much in lawyers' mindsets.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. And they've done it time and time again. They've found ways. That the example I always love is, a client will never pay for a partner or an associate, a senior associate, to go to a law library, open up a book, and find case law.
Yeah.
Right. It's clear that should have been done through Westlaw or LexisNexis, what have you. Did that disrupt the model completely?
No.
Did that say, well, now we can't charge for our research? And same with discovery. You used to have a massive physical room of paper. You're shifting through all the paper. And then we had technology that now hosts it online and folks can scrape data and search data en masse. Did that change? The model might have optimized the pricing a bit, but didn't break the model. And I think this here is no different. Even if it moves folks away from the billable hour, I think it increases the volume of work that these firms can perform and protects their margins, which brings that same profitability they experience today.
So the final question, Eric, I have as we close out the podcast is, what does the AI story look like for business and more specifically for the professional services sector in 2030? There's lots of stories out there. Are we in a bubble? We're going to see consolidation. You see folks like Jeff Bezos, I think, said the other day that this could be a bubble, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That was a headline in the Wall Street Journal, at least what I read. What are your top 3 predictions for professional services in the AI story as we look towards 2030? What do you think will change fundamentally most, and what will it look like?
So I think I can think of 2. That's as far as my imagination will go. But here are my top 2, and this is all based on my opinion and my opinion alone. The first I'd say is I believe businesses will actually have localized LLMs. Like they will be able to copy these language models, tune them themselves, but rather process them locally on device rather than through the infrastructure there is now. I think there's a big concern security-wise that if we give up our data, will a lot of these other folks have access to our proprietary knowledge set. So I think the LLM as a service, if you will, industry is really going to take off. And that leads to my second prediction, which I'm really excited about, is I think firms are going to start writing their own software. I think they're going to start saying, why are we outsourcing a lot or purchasing so many technologies or other folks? Let's bring engineers in-house and actually write our own software and build our own. You actually see this at some firms now, which is pretty cool. And I think that's going to be hyper-driven. And in 4 years' time, you might have an operating system that's custom to that business, as this is how we do business, and these are the tools that we made to optimize practice. That'll dramatically reduce tech spend, I think, and at the same time increase efficiency. It's all just going to come down to what they think they can build and what they otherwise can't.
And presumably you see Laurel as a key partner for that story.
I do. I think the effort on what tools folks build is really important. And for something like timekeeping that requires the data now to be harvested so that you can expose how to be efficient in that new world, makes Laurel like pretty key to that whole story, and really excited for what that future looks like.
Excellent predictions, Eric. Thank you very much for your time. Been fantastic speaking with you over the last hour or so, and looking forward to connecting with you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to the Legal Innovation Forum podcast. Stay tuned on our website for the next edition. You can listen to us on all your favorite podcast platforms. Tune in on liforum.co/podcasts.